Hello everyone and welcome to today's session. And today we'll be discussing the theory related to the chapter biological classification. Okay. So in this session we'll be discussing the theory based on the NEET exam. So I will tell you which topics are very important, what is the weightage of this chapter, what are the concepts on which questions can come. So we'll discuss this. So this session or this lecture is focusing on the NEET exam. So before starting the lectures, I want to give you one information that the images, text, and other materials used in our presentations are for education purposes only. We respect the intellectual property rights of the original creators and owners. If you are the owner and have any concerns or issues, please contact us at sathee@itk.ac.in and we shall remove the content immediately. Please note that parts of the content may have been generated using generative AI, which is experimental. So what we will study in this lecture? What are the objective of this lecture today? So we will understand and we will study the bacterial fundamentals, or concepts related to the kingdom Monera, which includes the bacteria, focusing on the NEET exam, and we'll talk about the cell structure, classification. So kingdom Monera is further divided into archaebacteria and eubacteria. We'll talk about these two groups. We'll talk about the reproduction methods, and we'll talk about the economic importance of the bacteria. Then we'll focus on the kingdom Protista also. We will understand the fundamental concepts of the kingdom Protista, focusing on the NEET exam, and we'll talk about the diverse cell structures. So Protista includes unicellular eukaryotes. We'll talk about these organisms. We'll talk about the classification, reproduction methods, and their ecological and economic significance. So we'll talk about kingdom Monera and kingdom Protista in this lecture, focusing on the NEET exam. First, we'll talk about the trend analysis. In this, we'll talk about the weightage of the chapter and the topics which are very important for the NEET exam. Then I will give you an introduction of this chapter. We'll talk about kingdom Monera, archaebacteria, eubacteria. Then we'll start with the kingdom Protista, and under kingdom Protista, we'll talk about chrysophytes, dinoflagellates, euglenoids, and slime molds. Then we'll talk about the protozoans, which are also included under the kingdom Protista. Clear? So this is very important here. You can see the weightage of this chapter. This is 1.6%. And you get 1 to 2 questions every year from this chapter. So you can see this chapter is very important. Even if you are getting 1 and 2 questions, still you should study all the topics from this chapter. Number of questions from 2018 to 2024. So if we select this time frame, 2018 to 2024, 11 questions have come from this chapter. Now here this table shows you the topic, the concept used, the number of questions, and the difficulty level of the questions, and the year is also given. In 2018, you can see the questions have come from the kingdom Protista. Then questions are coming from kingdom Monera, kingdom Fungi. In 2023, there was no question from this chapter. So usually the questions are coming from kingdom Fungi, Monera, and the kingdom Protista. Then questions are coming from the topic virus, viroids, lichens. These are also very important, virus, viroids, and lichens. In 2020, questions came from viroids. What is the cellular composition of viroids? Then questions are coming from the plasmogamy. What is plasmogamy? Fusion of the protoplasm. And questions are coming from characteristic of virus, viroids, prions. And then different types of fungi. Questions have come from dinoflagellates and protozoans, which come under kingdom Protista. So maximum number of questions, even 4 questions have come from this chapter. So you can see. So every year it varies. 4 questions have also come from this chapter. Minimum number of question, 1 question. Maximum number of question, 4 question. Usually the questions, they are of average type. Sometimes the questions are quite easy also. So when they have given you 4 questions, these 4 questions were easy. So if they have increased the number of questions, then these questions were very easy. Okay, sometimes the questions, some of the question can be quite difficult also, some can be easy also. Okay. So let's start with the introduction now. So we'll be focusing on the topics here which are very important for the NEET exam. Clear? So let's start with the Linnaeus system of classification. So Linnaeus gave 2 kingdom system of classification. What were these two kingdoms? Kingdom Plantae and Kingdom Animalia. Okay. So these were the 2 groups or 2 kingdoms which are formed by Linnaeus. This is 2 kingdom classification. First of all, this is very important. That's why we are starting with the 2 kingdom classification. Before this, there was a classification given by Aristotle. Okay. And before Aristotle, the classification system didn't have any scientific basis. They were just based on the use of the animals. Okay. But there were limitations to the two kingdom system of classification. Okay. So this system did not distinguish between the eukaryotes and the prokaryotes, first of all. So you should know the limitations of the 2 kingdom classification. The eukaryotic and prokaryotic organism were placed in a same group. Prokaryotes, these are bacteria. And rest of the organisms, they are eukaryote. So they were placed in the same group. Clear? Now unicellular, multicellular organisms were placed in the same group. Again, bacteria, they are unicellular. They were placed with multicellular organisms. Okay. Like animals are multicellular. Bacteria, they are unicellular. Plants, they are multicellular. Okay. And there was no distinction between photosynthetic and non-photosynthetic organisms. So like algae and plants, they are photosynthetic. They can photosynthesize. They can prepare their own food. And fungi, they are saprophytic. They obtain nutrients from dead and decaying organic matter. So there was no separation between eukaryotes and prokaryotes, unicellular, multicellular, and photosynthetic and non-photosynthetic, means autotrophic and heterotrophic organisms. So fungi, they are heterotrophic. Plants and algae, they are autotrophic. So there was no distinction. All the organisms were placed in a single group. Clear? So there was a group in plant group, in Kingdom Plantae. The fungi was also included, bacteria was also included, moss was also included, then ferns, gymnosperm, angiosperm, everything was included. All the organisms were included in the Kingdom Plantae. Okay, which is not right. Okay, and what basis they were placed in a single group? So they were placed in this group based on the presence of the cell wall. So this was the criteria of placing these organisms into one group. Presence of cell wall. Bacteria also have a cell wall. Fungi also have a cell wall. Plants, they also have a cell wall. But you know that the composition of the cell wall is different. So earlier, these all were placed in a single group based on the presence of the cell wall. Okay. So bacteria, they are prokaryotes. They were placed with eukaryotes. Again, unicellular organism were placed with multicellular organism. Fungi, which is heterotrophic organism, they were placed with the algae, which are photosynthetic. Now, so this classification was very simple. Clear? But large number of organisms did not fall into either category. So there were large number of organisms which was not falling into these categories, plant and the animals. So for them, separate groups should be made. Okay, they were not like Kingdom Fungi. It has been made. Bacteria, they are placed in kingdom Monera now. Fungi, it have unique characteristics. Cell wall is made up of chitin. They are saprophytes, so they are placed in another group. Kingdom Monera includes all the prokaryotes, unicellular prokaryotes, which are bacteria. So all the organisms were not falling into these two categories. So two kingdom classification used for a long time was found inadequate. Now the classification system for the living organisms have undergone several changes. Why it has gone several changes? Because now we have better techniques, we have better microscope. Okay, now we can reach the remote areas where we are finding new organisms. Now we are studying the organism at molecular and genetic level. We are also taking into consideration evolutionary relationship. So now we are able to better understand the living organism. Okay, we can understand the evolutionary relationship also. So that's why the classification system, they are changing. Now the plant and animal kingdoms, they have been always constant under all the systems. So there are many systems, 2 kingdom classification, then you have 5 kingdom classification, you have 6 kingdom classification. So in all of these kingdoms, or in all of these classification system, plants and animals kingdom, these 2 kingdoms, these have been constant, and other kingdoms have been added, like kingdom Monera, fungi, okay, kingdom Protista. Here. Now, which organism should be placed in which group? This depends on the scientist or the perspective of the scientist. Okay, so different scientists, they, you can say, use different criteria to group these organisms, and their perspective, their thinking is also different. So based on the scientist. Here, so this is also one of the reason for the change in the classification system. How the scientist is looking at a particular organism, or which criteria it is following for placing the organism into different groups. Whitaker in 1969, he proposed 5 kingdom classification. What were these kingdoms? Monera, Protista, fungi, plantae, and Animalia. So here you can see this, from this line of the NCERT book, the question has come. The main criteria of classification used by Whitaker was cell structure or body organization, mode of nutrition, mode of reproduction, and phylogenetic relationship. So you should remember, this question can come from this. Question has already come from this line. What was the criteria for the 5 kingdom classification? Okay, cell structure. Does the cell contain cell wall, or does it not contain the cell wall? Is the cell prokaryotic or eukaryotic? Then body organization, whether cell is unicellular or multicellular, whether the organism is multicellular, unicellular, whether they have tissues, whether they have organ or organ systems. Then they are autotrophic or heterotrophic. Then they reproduce sexually or asexually, or by both. And what is the evolutionary relationship? Then came the 3-domain system. This is also very important, 3-domain system. What were the 3 domains? Archaea, bacteria, and eukarya. So kingdom Monera was further divided into 2 domains. In total, we have 3 domains: Archaea, bacteria, and eukarya. Archaea and bacteria, they consist of the prokaryotic organism, and eukarya contains all the eukaryotic organisms. So this is also known as 6 kingdom classification, because Monera has been divided into 2 groups further. Okay, so 3-domain classification you can call it, or 6-kingdom classification. Now you can see under the group plants, bacteria, which are prokaryotes, blue-green algae, which are again unicellular prokaryotes, blue-green algae, cyanobacteria, fungi, which are multicellular, mosses, ferns, gymnosperms, angiosperms, these are all included under the plants. Fungi, they are heterotrophs. Okay, plants and algae, they are phototrophs. Bacteria are prokaryotic. Then fungi and plants, they are all eukaryotes. Okay, Then there were no distinction between the autotrophic and the heterotrophic organism. Fungi are heterotrophic, plants they are autotrophic. So all of these organisms were placed under the plants based on what? Based on the presence of the cell wall. But you know that all these organisms are very different from each other. So they differ in lot of characteristics, like mode of nutrition, mode of reproduction, their cell structure, okay, their body organization. Okay, let's talk about the 5 kingdoms now, characteristic of the 5 kingdom. So again, you should know about this. Let's talk about Monera and Protista first. So Monera, they are prokaryote, Protista, they are eukaryote. So prokaryotic cells, they don't have a true nucleus. In terms of nucleus, they have a nucleoid. Okay, they don't have membrane-bound cell organelles. Eukaryotic cell, they have true nucleus. They have membrane-bound cell organelles. Then cell wall, in Monera, it is non-cellulosic. Basically, Monera consists of bacteria. And the true bacteria, in true bacteria, cell wall is made up of peptidoglycan. Remember this. You can write. In bacteria, cell wall consists of peptidoglycan. Okay, we are talking about the true bacteria. Then in Protista, it is present in some, nuclear membrane absent because they are prokaryotic cell. In Protista, it is present. Body organization, these are cellular. Monera, they are unicellular, means single cell, that's why cellular. Protists, they are also unicellular, that's why cellular. Mode of nutrition can be autotrophic or heterotrophic. In Protista, they are autotrophic again or heterotrophic. Within autotrophs, you have 2 categories, chemosynthetic and photosynthetic. And within heterotroph, you have 2 categories, saprophytic and parasitic. Okay, Protista, they are only photosynthetic. While these bacteria, they can be chemosynthetic or photosynthetic. Okay, chemosynthetic means they oxidize the inorganic substances like nitrates and nitrites and ammonia, and they generate energy using these inorganic substrate by oxidation of this inorganic substrate. Photosynthetic means they can photosynthesize. They have the pigments such as chlorophyll, which are quite similar to the chlorophyll present in the plants. So they have pigments which are very similar to the pigments present in the plants. Now let's talk about the character of fungi, plantae, Animalia. All are eukaryotic. Cell wall is made up of chitin. It is composed of chitin in case of fungi. In plant, the cell wall consists of the cellulose. In animal, cell wall is absent. Nuclear membrane is present because they are eukaryotic cell. Let's talk about body organization. Fungi, they are usually multicellular and they have loose tissues. Plants, they have the tissue level of organization and they have organs also like shoots and roots. These are all organs. Then animals, they have tissues also. They have organ systems also like digestive system and excretory system. Let's talk about mode of nutrition. Fungi, they are heterotrophic. Okay. Plants, they are autotrophic. And animals, they are heterotrophic. Mode of nutrition is holozoic, means they ingest the food, then they digest the food, and then they absorb the nutrients from the digested food. So here you can see, clear? It brought together the prokaryotic bacteria and the blue-green algae with other groups which were eukaryotic. So bacteria is prokaryote, blue-green algae, this is a prokaryote. These were placed with the eukaryotic organisms, which is not correct. Okay. Now it also grouped unicellular organisms and the multicellular organisms together. So Chlamydomonas and Spirogyra, they were placed under algae, but Chlamydomona, this is unicellular, Spirogyra, this is multicellular. So they were also placed under the same group. Clear? But this is not correct. Although they are placed in the algae here. Clear? Unicellular organisms are placed with the multicellular organisms. Now, this classification did not differentiate between heterotrophic group fungi and the autotrophic green plants. So, we are talking about the limitations of the 2 kingdom system of classification. Okay, we talked earlier, there was no distinction between unicellular, multicellular, prokaryotic, eukaryotic, and autotrophic and heterotrophic. So, again, fungi were placed with the green plants. Fungi, they are heterotrophic plants, they are autotrophic. Fungi, they have different cell wall composition, they have chitin. So, that's why the Fungi were later placed in separate kingdom known as Kingdom Fungi, and bacteria were placed in Kingdom Monera. Okay, all prokaryotic organisms were placed under Kingdom Monera, and unicellular eukaryotic, remember, unicellular eukaryotic organisms were placed in Kingdom Protista. Again, you should remember, this is very important. They can ask question from this line. Now let's talk about Kingdom Protista. Okay. Just a little bit about Kingdom Protista here. In Kingdom Protista, Chlamydomonas and Chlorella, which are unicellular eukaryotes, which were earlier placed in algae within the plants. Okay, they are placed with Paramecium and amoeba. So Paramecium and amoeba, they are also placed under Kingdom Protista, and Chlamydomonas and Chlorella, they are also placed under Kingdom Protista. But Chlamydomonas and Chlorella, these are also studied under the algae. Here, so you can see Chlamydomonas and Chlorella, they are placed along with Paramecium and amoeba in the Kingdom Protista now. Okay. Okay, it has put together organisms which in earlier classification were placed in the different kingdoms. So now the Protista includes Chlamydomonas and Chlorella as well as Paramecium and amoeba also. This has remained because the criteria for classification changed. Okay, so you can see here, Chlamydomonas and Chlorella, these were placed in algae earlier. Now they are placed in Protista in the 5 kingdom of classification. Because the criteria for the classification are now changing. Okay, we are now studying these organisms at genetic and molecular level. We are taking into account evolutionary relationship. So that's why the classification system are changing. Okay, let's talk about Kingdom Monera. Kingdom Monera consists of bacteria. It includes bacteria. Bacteria are abundant organisms. They are cosmopolitan. They are present everywhere. Bacteria can live in extreme habitats such as hot springs, deserts, snow, and deep oceans where any other organisms cannot survive. Many of the, you can say, bacteria, they are parasitic. They live in or on the organisms as parasites. Now, bacteria can be divided into 4 groups based on their shape. Okay. So you should remember these 4 groups. These 4 groups are made or they are based on the shape of the bacteria. The bacteria can be spherical, example is coccus. They can be rod-shaped, bacillus. They can be comma-shaped, example is vibrium, or they can be spiral, example is spirillum. So you should remember the different shapes of the bacteria. These are spherical, then you have rod-shaped, then you have spiral, and then you have comma-shaped. Though the bacteria structure is very simple, they have a very complex behavior. They have very, you can say, extensive metabolic diversity. Again, this is very important. Underline this. This is very important for your NEET exam. They have extensive metabolic diversity. So this helps them to survive in various conditions, various environment, various habitats. So they can be autotrophic, means they can prepare their own food from inorganic substances. Remember this. So in photosynthesis, what happens? Carbon dioxide combines with water. So these are all inorganic substances. They combine together in the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll to form glucose. Okay, or sugars. Within autotrophs, you have photosynthetic autotrophs and chemosynthetic autotrophs. The question has come from this. Okay, the question has come from this. What is photosynthetic autotrophs and chemosynthetic autotroph? Okay. Like cyanobacteria, this is a phototrophic autotroph. It can photosynthesize. Okay. Then chemosynthetic autotrophs, they are sulfur oxidizing bacteria. Example is sulfur oxidizing bacteria. So you have to know the examples also. Vast majority of bacteria are heterotrophs. That is, they obtain nutrients from the other organism. or they obtain nutrients from dead and decaying organic matter. So you can say they are parasitic. Okay, they are parasitic, or they can be decomposers also, which feed on this dead and decaying organic matter. Let's talk about archaebacteria. Archaebacteria, they are the primitive bacteria. Remember this. Okay, they live in extreme environment. They are known as extremophils. They can live in extreme environment like hot springs, salty areas, marshy areas. So you should remember these terms: halophytes, thermoacidophils, and methanogens. Methanogens, they have the ability to produce methane. So again, question has come from this line. Archaebacteria. Archaebacteria, as I have told you, they can survive in extreme environments. How they can survive in extreme environment? Because of the presence of, you can say, a special kind of cell wall. So they have different cell wall structure. The archaebacteria have different cell wall structure. Usually the true bacteria, they consist of peptidoglycan in their cell wall. But in case of archaebacteria, the cell wall consists of pseudomurine instead of peptidoglycan. Okay, so you can again write this as the archaebacteria cell wall structure is different. They consist of pseudomurine, they consist of glycoproteins, and they consist of complex polysaccharides. Okay, so this is also very important. So this is how they survive in the extreme habitat, because of their different cell wall structure. Now methanogens, they have the ability to produce methane. They are present in the gut of the ruminant animals such as cow and buffaloes. They are also present in the gut of humans also. So they are also important part of the human flora. Okay. The human gut also consists of bacteria. Some of them are beneficial also. Out of that 10% are methanogens. Okay, out of the total bacteria present in the gut, 10% are methanogens. Methanogens have the ability to produce methane, which is a major component of the biogas. So these methanogens can produce methane from the animal dung. Let's talk about the eubacteria. Eubacteria, it is a true bacteria. Again, question has come from this line. Okay, they have a rigid cell wall, and they might consist of flagellum also. If they consist of flagellum, then they are motile. Now the cyanobacteria, which is also known as blue-green algae, have chlorophyll A, similar to green plants, and are photosynthetic autotrophs. Again, remember this. This line is also very important. Question can come from here. Cyanobacteria, they can be unicellular. Okay, they can be colonial or filamentous. They can be freshwater, marine, or terrestrial algae. Clear? So they are unicellular forms, colonial, filamentous forms. Some live in freshwater, some in marine, and there are terrestrial algae also. The colony is surrounded by gelatinous sheath. Now the algae, they form the algal blooms. So these algal blooms, remember these algal blooms, okay, they consist of the cyanobacteria. So cyanobacteria form the algal blooms in the polluted water bodies. So what is algal bloom? This is the overgrowth or rapid multiplication of the algae in the water. Okay. Why there is the overgrowth or rapid multiplication of the algae? Because of the presence of certain minerals and nutrients in the water, such as nitrogen and phosphorus. So when the water is rich in nitrogen and phosphorus, then there will be overgrowth of the algae. This is known as algal blooms. Again, remember this algal blooms cause discoloration of the water. And now it leads to these algal blooms can be dangerous, because when the algae die, then organic matter gets accumulated in the water. Now for the decomposition of this organic matter, oxygen is required. Okay. So now oxygen is being used for the decomposition of the algae. Okay, of decomposition of the organic matter. So this decreases the BOD. Okay, so you can say the BOD. okay, which is biological oxygen demand. Okay, or you can say less oxygen is available for the aquatic animals like fishes. So this can be dangerous for the aquatic life. Clear? Because oxygen is getting utilized by the decomposition. It is used in the decomposition of the algae. Clear? So algal blooms will cause increase in the BOD. Increase in the BOD for the aquatic animals. Increase in the BOD means increase in the biological oxygen demand. Remember this, increase in the BOD means there is an increased demand for oxygen by the aquatic animals because oxygen being utilized by the, or it is being utilized for the decomposition of the organic matter. Now, some of these organisms can fix atmospheric nitrogen in specialized cells called heterocyst. Again, you can get a question from here. Okay, this is heterocyst. Heterocysts are specialized cells which are involved in the fixation of atmospheric nitrogen. Example is nostoc and Animalia. Question has come from here. Here you can see this is a heterocyst present in the filamentous blue-green algae, which is nostoc. So you should remember the example also in nostoc. Nostoc is blue-green algae and they consist of a specialized cells known as heterocyst. Talk about chemosynthetic autotrophic bacteria. They oxidize various inorganic substances such as nitrates, nitrites, and ammonia and use the release energy for their ATP production. Now, what is the importance of chemosynthetic bacteria? Remember this. They play a great role in mineral cycling or nutrient cycling, such as nitrogen, phosphorus, iron, and sulfur. So this you should remember the advantage or the importance of chemosynthetic autotrophic bacteria. Then let's talk about the heterotrophic bacteria now. We were talking about the autotrophic bacteria. Let's talk about the heterotrophic bacteria now. They are abundant in nature. These heterotrophic bacteria, they are decomposers. Okay, this is very important. They are decomposers. They can decompose the organic matter. They are also involved in the production of the curd from the milk. Certain bacteria like lactic acid bacteria known as lactobacillus, they can form curd from the milk. Some can produce antibiotics such as streptomycin is obtained from streptococcus. Then they can fix nitrogen in the leguminous root also, in leguminous plants. Some are pathogens and they cause diseases in humans, in crops, means in plants, in animals as well as the pets. Okay, now they cause disease like cholera, typhoid, tetanus, and citrus canker. And how the bacteria reproduce? So they reproduce by asexual reproduction, which is known as fission, basically binary fission. Where one cell divides into two, this is known as the binary fission. This is one parent cell divided into two daughter cells. Bacteria reproduce primarily by fission. This is the bacteria which is dividing. The bacteria consists of the genetic material, which is DNA here. So they don't have a true nucleus. So just DNA is just lying here in this region. Region is known as the nucleoid. And the bacteria consists of cell wall and the cell membrane. So one bacteria is dividing into two bacteria. What happens under unfavorable conditions? The bacteria form spores. So this is a kind of survival strategy. These spores can survive the adverse condition. And whenever favorable conditions return, these spores can again germinate and form the, you can say, new organism. Now there is, again remember this, bacteria, they reproduce by a sort of sexual reproduction. So this is not true sexual reproduction. This is a sort of sexual reproduction, such as conjugation. Okay, you can write conjugation is a sort of sexual reproduction. It is not true sexual reproduction. In conjugation, what happens? This one